They said my baby was stillborn, but 1 year later I saw her in the arms of.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Please take a deep breath. We'll check right away. A young doctor said quickly before hurrying out. After a moment of chaos, the head doctor, a man in his early 50s with a cold expression, entered the room. I'm Dr. Michael Harris. The fetus is in distress. We need to perform an emergency C-section. Clara tried to open her mouth but couldn't speak. All she saw was the blinding lights and the overwhelming smell of antiseptic. A nurse asked, "Has a family member signed the surgery consent form?" Paul stood outside, his hand trembling as he signed the paper. Clara was swiftly wheeled into the operating room. Everything after that faded into nothingness. When she woke up, the white light from the ceiling made Clara squint. Her throat was parched. She tried to sit up, but her body was heavy and sore. A nurse appeared. "Please don't move too much. The surgery is over." Clara panicked. "Where's my baby? Where is she?" The nurse lowered her head. I'll call the doctor right away." A while later, Dr. Harris walked in. No empathetic glance, no comforting words. He spoke flatly, as if delivering a routine blood test result. "Your baby was deprived of oxygen at birth. We attempted resuscitation, but it was unsuccessful. I'm very sorry." Clara stopped breathing for a moment. No way," she clutched the bedsheet, struggling to sit up, her whole body trembling. "I want to see my baby. I need to see her." Dr. Harris shook his head. "The body has already been processed according to protocol, based on the form your husband signed. In such cases, unless a request is made to retain the body, we transfer it to the handling center to ensure sanitation and follow legal procedures. No one asked me anything. I didn't sign anything. I'm the baby's mother." Clara screamed, pounding her fists on the bed. She had never felt so powerless. No one looked her in the eye. No one acknowledged that she was breaking apart. A young nurse nearby looked moved. She hesitated, then stepped forward and gently placed her hand on Clara's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Was there something wrong with her?" Clara sobbed. "I did all the ultrasounds. Everything was fine." Dr. Harris sighed. "Sometimes complications arise unexpectedly. We did all we could." Clara went silent. Everything was crumbling. She remembered every ultrasound image, every tiny movement. She remembered the small heart-shaped birthmark on her baby's forehead that the doctor once laughed about, calling it the angel girl's special sign. Now there was nothing. A cold wind swept through, penetrating every cell. Clara no longer cried. She just sat in silence. Paul entered the room, avoiding her eyes. He muttered, "They said there was nothing more they could do. I'm sorry." Then silence. No hug. No words of comfort. 3 days later, Clara was discharged. In her hand was a bag of painkillers and a cold certificate of death with the line, "Cause of death neonatal asphyxia body processed." No photo, no name, no memory. Only a void. Forever. Back home, the baby's room now resembled a morgue in her mind. The toys had lost all meaning. Clara stepped inside and opened the tiny wardrobe, where the words, "My little Lucy," were embroidered on a little pajama set. She clutched it tightly and screamed like a wounded animal. Paul quietly closed the door and didn't return. During the first week, Clara didn't get out of bed. She didn't eat, didn't speak to anyone, didn't touch her phone. Her mother Stella flew in from Santa Fe, so worried she barely recognized her own daughter. "Clara, you can't go on like this," but every time she entered the room, Clara just shook her head. One night, Clara dreamed she was standing in the delivery room, watching a red, newborn baby being brought out. But just as she reached to hold her, a man in a white coat appeared, scooped up the baby, and turned away. Clara screamed, but no one looked back. When she woke up, her pillow was soaked with tears. A month passed. Clara began walking slowly around the neighborhood, trying to reclaim a rhythm of life. But something inside her felt dead. No more laughter, no more hope. Just the shadow of a mother who never got to be one. One day, she saw a young couple pushing a stroller past her house. The baby girl inside giggled gleefully. Clara turned away, head bowed, as tears welled up again. The deepest pain wasn't losing someone, it was never getting the chance to love them at all. Paul became increasingly distant. He worked longer hours, using busyness as an excuse to avoid home. When he was home, he buried himself in his phone or slept on the couch. One night, Clara asked, "Do you ever think she might still be alive?" Paul stared at her, then stood up. "You're starting again. You need to accept it. I'm tired of hearing this. She's gone. Let it be." Clara said nothing, but something inside her stirred. Why did he react so strongly? Why had no one given her a clear answer? Why wasn't the baby's name on any document? That night, she opened the medical file again. The death certificate, the doctor's signature, a faint name, Dr. F. Harris. No birth certificate. No confirmation of the baby's presence in the hospital's birth records. Clara clutched the paper, a storm rising inside her. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. She whispered, as if to herself. "Baby, if you're still out there somewhere, I will find you. I swear." 3 months after that fateful day, Clara still couldn't pull herself out of the abyss. The house was dark, heavy with grief. Every footstep echoed with her midnight sobs. The air no longer held love, only weight pressing into every corner. Paul felt more and more like a stranger. He was no longer the man who held her each morning and whispered to her belly. No longer the man who excitedly looked at baby cribs or picked out names. Now, Paul was just a shadow, silently leaving each morning and coming home late without a word. One late afternoon, Clara sat by the window with the wool scarf she had once knitted for her daughter. She saw Paul come home. The door slammed shut like the final punctuation mark. Clara spoke with a trembling voice. "Paul, can we talk for a bit?" He didn't turn around. Taking off his shoes, he said quietly. "What do you need?" I just want to know, how do you feel?" I haven't seen you grieve at all." Paul turned, his gaze cold. "What do you want me to do? Cry every day like you?" "I'm hurting too, but adults have to keep going. I can't live like nothing happened, Paul. I lost our child. I can't." "She wasn't just your child." Paul snapped, "I was her father too, Clara. But I can't sit around and mope every day. You need to stop. You're suffocating me." Clara was stunned. Suffocating? She thought. My pain is what's making you feel suffocated. She clenched her fists, her voice trembling. I can't pretend like nothing happened. I still think of her every hour. I dream of her every night. Enough. Paul cut her off. You need psychological help. This isn't the first time you've said these things. It's like, you think she's still alive. Clara looked him straight in the eye. Sometimes I really do. I feel like something's not right, Paul. The way they handled everything was too fast. They didn't let me see her. No photo. No birth certificate. Doesn't that seem strange to you? Paul clenched his fists, his voice tightening. You're starting to say dangerous things. Don't push yourself into delusions. You're living in a fantasy. I can't take this anymore. Paul walked into the bedroom and locked the door. Clara sat alone in the living room, feeling as if she'd just been slapped. She no longer knew what was real and what was imagined. But the coldness of the man who was once her husband, her only support, left her feeling utterly lost. In the days that followed, Paul became even more distant. He came home less often, frequently sleeping at work or claiming to be on business trips. Clara began to feel suspicious. One day, while doing his laundry, she found a receipt from an unfamiliar hotel. No name, only the words, "Room reserved, double room." Clara said nothing. She folded it and put it back where she found it. Her heart ached, but she didn't have the strength to be angry. It felt like all her emotions had been drained. At her mother's urging, Clara began seeing a therapist. The psychologist's name was Lisa, a gentle woman who was a good listener. At first, Clara stayed silent during the sessions. But gradually, she began to open up, about the night of the C-section, the emptiness when she woke up, the doctor's voice she kept hearing in her dreams. "Clara," Dr. Lisa said one day, "I understand the pain of losing a child. But if there's something inside you that hasn't been answered, no one has the right to force you to forget. You have the right to question. You have the right to search. But what's most important is to keep yourself safe no matter what truths you uncover." Clara broke down in tears. They flowed from the deepest part of her being. One night, Clara woke up at 3 a.m. Paul hadn't come home. She picked up her phone and called him. One ring, two, three. No answer. She stepped into the living room, and under the faint light of the cabinet lamp, she saw his shoes still wet from the rain. Where was he? She didn't know anymore. She didn't know anything about her husband anymore. The man who used to sit for hours on the couch reading books about raising a daughter now didn't even mention the baby they had once dreamed of. One morning, Clara gathered all her courage to talk seriously. "Paul, we can't go on like this. If you don't want to be with me anymore, just say it. But if there's even a little part of you that still cares, I'm begging you to help me find the truth. At least so I can have peace." Paul scoffed sarcastically. "The truth? You want to investigate the hospital? You think someone kidnapped our baby? Do you even realize how crazy you sound right now? I don't need you to believe me. I just need you not to stand in my way. Then go do it yourself. But don't drag me into it. I'm sick of this house, this atmosphere." Clara turned away silently. There were no more tears. One afternoon, her mother Stella came to visit. She looked at her daughter gaunt, with deep circles under her eyes. "Clara, you need to get away from here for a while. I can take you back to Santa Fe for a few weeks. Get some fresh air, see old friends." "Mom, I need to stay. I'm not finished with this." "You still believe the baby is alive?" Clara said nothing. It wasn't belief anymore. It was instinct. A strange intuition that came from the flesh and blood of a mother. That night, Paul came home and saw Clara's luggage by the door. He squinted. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to my mom's for a few days. I need to think about everything. Anne. I can't keep enduring this coldness." Paul didn't respond. He just walked past her, opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and sat on the couch. "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know. Maybe a week. Maybe longer." He nodded, eyes glued to his phone. Clara opened the door and stepped outside. The wind hit her face. She pulled her suitcase through the gate, the same gate where a year ago a ribbon had once hung "Welcome Baby Lucy." Everything had changed. The man who once held her hand in the delivery room now couldn't even look at her. She didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing: if she didn't uncover the truth herself, she wouldn't be able to go on living. And from that moment, she would no longer wait for anyone. Clara had been at her mother's house for nearly 3 weeks. During that time, she didn't do much besides walking around her old neighborhood, where she had grown up. The narrow cobbled street still looked the same as when she was a teenage girl, but her heart had been shattered. Some days, she wandered aimlessly from morning until dusk. The loneliness and emptiness seemed impossible to shake. Her mother Stella did everything she could to help her daughter recover, but she knew that only Clara could save herself from the long nightmare. That afternoon, the weather was neither sunny nor rainy. Clara sat on a bench in the park near the house. It was the park where she and Paul used to walk hand in hand. When she was pregnant, Clara had imagined herself strolling here with baby Lucy, buying ice cream and laughing together. Now everything was just bitter fragments of memory. Clara pulled a tissue from her coat pocket and dabbed at her eyes. She took a deep breath, as if trying to inhale all the sadness and swallow it. And then she froze. In the distance, near the old fountain, there was a middle-aged woman holding a baby girl. From afar, Clara couldn't see clearly, but there was one thing that left her stunned, a faint pink heart-shaped birthmark right in the middle of the baby's forehead. Clara's heart pounded, each beat ripping through her chest. She remembered it perfectly, that special birthmark the ultrasound doctor had once shown her. A mark of love, he had joked. That birthmark wasn't common, and this couldn't be a coincidence. Clara jumped up, quickly walking toward the woman. Her feet barely touched the ground. Her hands trembled. Her heart rang with a strange calling, the calling of a mother who had once lost her child. "Excuse me," Clara said hesitantly. "Can I ask, is this your daughter?" The woman turned around, looking surprised. She was around 40, well-dressed, in high heels and carrying a designer handbag. She held the little girl closer and nodded slightly. "Yes. She's my daughter." The baby looked a little over 1 year old, with curly hair and bright brown eyes. She looked at Clara, not with fear, but with a radiant smile. That smile took Clara's breath away. "What's her name?" Clara asked. "Lucy," the woman replied quickly. Then, as if realizing something, she turned away awkwardly. "I'm sorry, I have to go." Clara's heart jolted. She hurried to follow her. "Please wait. I know this sounds strange, but," the birthmark on her forehead, and her name. "Lucy. Did you adopt her from a hospital?" The woman tightened her hold on the child, her eyes now wary. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is my daughter. I have no obligation to explain anything to a stranger." "Please." Clara nearly begged, "I just want to know, did you adopt her from a hospital? Is she adopted? I don't know who you are, but the way you're following me is inappropriate. I ask you to stop." The woman suddenly grew cold, turned, and walked away faster, her heels echoing heavily on the park pavement. Clara stood frozen, heart pounding. Her whole body trembled. This couldn't be a coincidence. It couldn't be a hallucination. That birthmark, that name, everything matched. She knew, with all the instinct of a mother, that was her child. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The image of the baby kept playing in her mind, the eyes, the birthmark, and the smile. She opened her laptop and began searching through every medical facility in Los Angeles connected to infant adoptions. She didn't find anything concrete, but then an idea struck her: she had to go back to the park. For 3 days straight, Clara sat waiting on the same bench as before. The first day, no one came. The second, still nothing. By the third day, just as Clara was beginning to lose hope, she saw that familiar figure. The woman was now pushing a stroller, not carrying the baby in her arms like before. Clara didn't approach. She stood behind a tree, observing. This time, she noticed more details: a luxurious wedding ring on the woman's hand, expensive shoes, and especially a designer handbag with the logo of an upscale residential complex in northern Los Angeles. She took a few photos from afar. Then Clara left, heading straight to the home of an old friend, Andrew, a lawyer she had known from college. "Andrew, I know this sounds insane. But I need your help. I suspect my daughter never actually died. I saw a baby with the exact same birthmark, the same name, being raised by a woman I've never seen before. Andrew studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. Do you have pictures? Clara handed them over. He looked closely, then said. It might be a coincidence, but it might not be. What's her name? I don't know yet. But I think she lives in Beverly Hills, in a gated community up north. I'll help. But we need to be careful, Clara. This is delicate. Without evidence, you could be countersued for violating her privacy. I understand. But if that's my daughter, I can't just let this go. The next day, Andrew called Clara back. I found her. Her name is Isabel Thompson. She lives in a luxury apartment in Beverly Hills. Widowed. And she has an adopted daughter, taken in through a personal contact in the medical field according to the official adoption paperwork. It doesn't mention which hospital. It just says it was a special case. Clara fell silent. Can you help me get close to her? It won't be easy. But you can try to approach her again. Be careful, though don't give her a reason to call the police. 2 days later, Clara stood at the entrance of the Beverly Hills community. She wore a gray coat and a knit cap, nearly hiding her face. When Isabel exited the house with baby Lucy, Clara stepped forward and blocked her path. Ms. Thompson, please, I just need 5 minutes. I'm Clara Walker. I'm not crazy. I'm just a mother who was told her baby died at birth. But everything was suspicious. I never got to see her face. There was no birth certificate. No proof she ever existed. Then I saw you, with a little girl who has the exact same birthmark my Lucy had in her ultrasound. Isabel clutched the child tightly, her eyes flaring. I'm warning you. If you come near me or my daughter again, I'll call the police. You're obsessed, do you understand? If you truly have nothing to hide, then why are you afraid of a DNA test? We can do a simple test. Get out. Isabel screamed. You're a lunatic. She lifted the girl into her arms and stormed back into the complex. Clara stood still, tears streaming down her cheeks. But it wasn't fear, what she felt was a burning certainty. Isabel was hiding something. Clara left Beverly Hills with a heart torn between pain and blazing hope. Isabel's furious reaction, her panicked expression when Clara suggested a DNA test, it all pointed to one thing: the woman was hiding the truth. Clara had no more doubts. If there was nothing shady, Isabel wouldn't have acted like someone cornered. That night, Clara called Andrew, her voice trembling. She knows I'm on to her. She called me crazy, threatened to call the cops. But I saw it in her eyes, Andrew. Fear. I'm sure she knows exactly who she's holding in her arms. Do you have photos? Yes. I took several from a distance while she was holding Lucy. I also recorded her calling me insane, and when I brought up the DNA test, she paused for a few seconds before screaming. Andrew spoke softly. Clara, I don't want to get your hopes up just to see them crushed. But, based on what you've just told me, I think we can move forward. We need legal evidence. Let's start with the hospital. Exactly. I was thinking the same. I want to retrieve my delivery records. I was never shown my baby's face. I never received a birth certificate. Something's wrong. The next day, Clara returned alone to the hospital where she had given birth, St. Mary's Hospital. It had been nearly a year. Each step she took was a knife into her memory. The blinding white of the operating room, the long, echoing hallways, the sound of metal carts rolling across the floor, it all came rushing back to drown her again. At the records desk, Clara struggled to keep her voice steady. I'd like to request a copy of my birth records. I'm Clara Walker. I gave birth here on March 14th last year. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with gold-rimmed glasses, checked the computer. After a few keystrokes, she frowned. That's strange. There's only a record of your admission and the C-section surgery. But no birth certificate. No information about a newborn associated with you at all. Clara froze. That can't be. I had a C-section. The doctor was Dr. Michael Harris. They told me my baby suffocated and died right after birth. The clerk looked at Clara sympathetically. I'm sorry. The file might have been misplaced, or never updated. If you'd like, I can contact the Document Archives office for you. What about the death certificate? That would be handled by the administrative office. Do you have the original? Clara nodded. Yes. But it doesn't have the date or time of death, and the signature is barely legible. I can't even make out the doctor's name clearly. The woman hesitated. I'm not authorized to verify doctor signatures. But you can file a formal request to have the records reviewed if you suspect discrepancies. Clara left the counter, heart pounding. One name echoed in her mind: Dr. Michael Harris. The cold man who told her the baby had died. The one who denied her the chance to see her child. The one the nurse had once whispered about, saying no one liked to talk about him. That afternoon, she returned to the park where she first saw Isabel. She didn't expect to see her again but hoped someone in the neighborhood might know something. She walked around, asking street vendors and cafe employees. Luck struck when she found Mrs. Teresa, an elderly balloon vendor near the fountain. Clara showed her a picture of Isabel. Ma'am, have you seen this woman before? Mrs. Teresa squinted. Oh, yes, I have. She often brings her little girl here on Wednesday afternoons. Cute baby, but the mother? Very cold, never smiles. I think she lives in Beverly Hills. Do you know if she has any relatives? Not really. But once, I saw her with a doctor maybe in his 50s. They were speaking quietly, then left together. I remember because he wore a white lab coat and had a name badge. I think it said Michael. Clara could barely breathe. Are you sure? He was a doctor. Oh yes, definitely. I've seen him a few times. Why, do you know him? Clara didn't answer. Her fists clenched. Her heart pounded like it would explode. Everything was becoming clear. Isabel and Dr. Harris knew each other. They might even be family. And he was the very man who had performed her surgery. Back home, Clara opened her laptop and typed quickly, Michael Harris, St. Mary's Hospital, Family Relations. After a few minutes of searching, she found a small blurb in an old healthcare news article from 7 years ago. Dr. Michael Harris, head of obstetrics, had attended the opening ceremony of the private clinic Familia Nova with his niece, Isabel Thompson. Isabel Thompson. His niece. Clara jumped from her chair. Her blood felt like it was boiling. They took my baby. They swapped her. They faked her death on paper. Clara whispered aloud. Immediately, she called Andrew. I have proof now. Isabel is Dr. Harris's niece. They conspired to swap my baby. They falsified the death. They did everything so she could get Lucy without going through a legal adoption process. Andrew was silent for a moment. Can you prove it? I'll do whatever it takes. I can't let my daughter grow up in a lie. Clara, now's the time to be very careful. We need to contact a nurse who was there at the time of birth. Someone might be willing to talk. Clara thought for a moment. Then she remembered someone, Karen, the nurse who had helped her right after she woke up from the surgery. The next day, Clara tried to contact Karen. It took 3 phone calls and a bit of pleading, but finally Karen agreed to meet her at a small cafe in Venice Beach. I remember you, Karen said, holding a porcelain coffee cup. That delivery, it was very unusual. I haven't forgotten it because I was the one who received the order to transfer you from the recovery room. But I never saw the baby's body. I only saw Dr. Harris sign a paper very quickly, and then everything was passed on to administration. Did you ever suspect anything? Karen was silent for a few seconds. Then she sighed. I've heard a few rumors. There were some cases where the hospital secretly arranged adoptions for certain people who couldn't have children. But there's no proof. And who dares speak out against Harris? He's powerful. He's been tied to this hospital for 30 years. Clara clenched her fists. Would you be willing to testify if this goes to court? Karen looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll say what I saw. It's not much, but enough to get people asking questions. Clara smiled, tears spilling down her cheeks. For the first time in a year, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. Clara sat in her living room, clutching the old medical records she had dug out from a cardboard box under her bed. The pages were faded, corners bent, the cold printed words feeling like they were etched into her skin. Every time she reread them, the pain surged up like a wound that had never healed. At the top of the death certificate was the bold title, Death Certificate, St. Mary's Hospital, but just below it, Clara noticed the strange details she'd been too heartbroken to see before. The date and time of death field was left blank. Just a single, scribbled line of handwriting, due to respiratory complications at birth. No date. No time. No clear doctor's name. No red hospital stamp. She turned to the second page, the surgical summary. It listed Dr. Michael Harris as the operating physician and Dr. Carolina Montoya as the anesthesiologist, but there was no mention of the baby being resuscitated, nor the name of any delivery nurse, an unusual omission in standard procedure. Most importantly, there was no birth certificate. Clara ran her hands through her hair, heart pounding. Every blank space was proof of concealment. She took out her phone, photographed every page, and sent them to Andrew with a message. Do you see this? No date, no time, no name. They never intended to acknowledge my baby's existence. Andrew replied almost instantly, yes, this file is questionable. We can use it as preliminary evidence, but we'll need more to convince authorities to open an investigation. Clara sat in silence. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room where the tiny baby crib used to sit, the one they'd bought when she was only 4 months pregnant. Now, it was just an empty, dusty space. But in her mind, she saw something different, the baby in her arms, laughing, her bright brown eyes sparkling. And the faint pink heart-shaped birthmark right in the center of her forehead. I'll bring you home, Clara whispered, like a vow to herself. The next day, Clara decided to return to Beverly Hills. This time, not to confront Isabel but to observe. She sat in her car for 3 hours, patiently waiting. Finally, around 5:30 p.m., the familiar silver Audi appeared. Isabel was behind the wheel, the little girl asleep in the back seat. Clara followed. The car looped around 2 neighborhoods before stopping in front of a large cream-colored house with a black iron gate and security cameras at both corners. Clara parked 2 houses away and quietly took photos. On the doorbell, she saw a brass nameplate engraved, I. Thompson. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She pulled out the old ultrasound images. In one 3D image from the 32nd week, the doctor had clearly pointed out the birthmark on the baby's forehead. Back then, she and Paul had laughed, saying their daughter was a little princess with a special mark. Now, it was the only proof she had to recognize her child among thousands. She sent the ultrasound image to Andrew, with a message. Can you check whether Isabel's adoption papers ever mention a birthmark like this? Andrew called her immediately. I'll have to go through the judiciary to request access. But if she used her connection to Dr. Harris, the records may already have been altered. I'm ready to face whatever comes. I'm not afraid anymore. I just need to know my child is alive and hasn't been raised under a lie. The next morning, Clara returned to the hospital again. This time, she went straight to administration and asked to speak with the department head. After a short wait, a man in his early 50s came out and introduced himself as Mr. Smith, head of administrative records. "I'm sorry, Ms. Walker. We've checked again, and we really can't find any birth certificate for your baby. But this can happen if the birth had complications and the records were separated as a special case." Clara stared at him. A special case with no name? No date or time? No confirmation the baby ever existed? So your hospital can let a newborn vanish from records without anyone being held accountable? Mr. Smith looked uncomfortable. "I understand you're grieving. But if you believe something went wrong, you're entitled to file for an investigation. That's your right." "I will," Clara said firmly. "And I won't be doing it alone." That evening, Clara and Andrew met at his law office. On the table were hospital files, the questionable death certificate, photos of the little girl in the park, pictures of Isabel and Dr. Harris together, and the ultrasound image with the distinct birthmark. Andrew said, "We can compile a complaint and file it with the Department of Health, along with a formal accusation to the Organized Crime Division. If Dr. Harris has ever been suspected of child trafficking or baby swapping, this could force them to reopen archived cases." Clara clenched her fists, staring at the photo of the little girl. "I don't need anyone to get arrested right away. I just want my daughter to come home. Everything else, I'll leave to justice." Before she left the office, Andrew gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done amazingly, Clara. Not everyone has the strength to come this far." Clara gave a faint smile. It was weak but resolute. That night, back at her mother's house, Clara sat by the window like she often did. Stella came in, holding a cup of hot tea. "I heard you're investigating. I'm afraid you might get hurt all over again." "Mom," Clara said, "I can't hurt any more than I already do. The only thing that's kept me alive until now, is a feeling." A small smile in the park. "You once told me a real mother never gives up on her child. I'm just doing exactly that." Stella gently squeezed her daughter's hand, her eyes red. "Then I won't stop you anymore. I'll stand by you wherever you go." The next morning, Andrew called. "There's something you need to know. I just received a copy of an internal report from a source at the hospital. It includes a line that reads, 'Special education, referred to private contact. Confirmed by FR, meaning the newborn needed special care and was transferred to a personal contact. Confirmed by FR. You know who FR is?" Clara felt like she'd been struck by lightning. "Can you verify the authenticity of that document? It's not part of the official file, but if the source agrees to testify, we can submit it as supporting evidence in the investigation. Then help me contact them. I want to meet that person." That afternoon, they arranged to meet the person who had sent the file, a young doctor named Alexander Parker, who had just started at the hospital the year the incident happened. Alexander spoke in a low voice. "I saw that record when I was assigned to input handwritten notes into the system," Alexander said softly. "When I asked Dr. Harris about it, he simply said, 'Just do it. Don't ask questions.' I kept a copy because something felt wrong." "Thank you," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "You've just brought me one step closer to the truth." As she stepped out of the cafe, the golden afternoon sun filtered through the leaves. For the first time in months, Clara lifted her head and took a deep breath. She knew the battle ahead would be long. But she also knew one thing: she was no longer alone. That morning, Clara woke up with a strange feeling, not peace, but clarity. She no longer carried the haze of a grieving, delusional mother. What filled her now was the focused resolve of a woman standing between truth and lies. She got dressed, tied her hair back, and picked up the phone to call Andrew. "Do you remember I mentioned a nurse who was there when I woke up? Her name was Julia Clark. I remember it because she was the first person to speak to me after the surgery. I saw her name tag." "Clark?" Andrew repeated, thinking. I might be able to find a contact if she's still in the system. I think she retired. But I found a Facebook profile for someone named Julia Clark, and her profile photo shows her in an old nurse uniform, taken at St. Mary's Hospital. I haven't messaged her yet. I didn't want to raise suspicion. Send it to me. I'll reach out using a private account, from me, as a lawyer. More discreet. An hour later, Andrew texted back, she replied. Says she retired about a year ago. She's willing to meet you but only under strict conditions. No recording, no cameras, and total privacy. Clara's heart raced not out of fear, but hope. 3 days later, on a quiet Friday afternoon, they met Julia at a small riverside cafe, a place so secluded it felt like they were the only ones there. Julia looked to be in her early 60s, with short silver hair, sharp eyes, and a cautious expression. "You're Clara Walker?" she asked directly. "Yes, I am. I had a C-section at St. Mary's Hospital last March." "I remember," Julia nodded. "I was the one who helped move you from post-op to your room. You woke up around midnight, didn't you?" "Yes, that's right. I remember you gave me some water and asked if I was in pain." Julia studied her for a long moment. "You still believe your daughter is alive?" Clara nodded, her gaze steady. "I don't just believe. I know. And I need you to tell me what you know." Julia clasped her hands tightly. There was a brief silence. Then she lowered her voice. "I saw a lot of strange things during my final years at St. Mary's. But what happened to you is the one case that still haunts me." Clara leaned forward, her heart pounding. "Please. I never saw the baby," Julia began. "After the surgery, they moved you to recovery. Normally, a neonatal nurse brings the baby for checkups and registration. But that night, no one came. I asked, and I was told by Dr. Harris, infant deceased. No further notice needed." "No further notice." Clara echoed in shock. "That's right. I found it strange. I asked a colleague, and she whispered, maybe it's another special case." "What do you mean?" Clara asked. "In my later years at the hospital, I started hearing about certain cases. Very rare, but they existed. Especially under Dr. Harris. Cases where newborns were handed over to outside individuals through private arrangements. Do you have any proof?" Andrew interjected calmly. "No. All documents were handled carefully. But I always had a bad feeling whenever Isabel Thompson showed up." Clara held her breath. You know Isabel?" "Yes. She came to the hospital several times. Always went straight to Harris's private office. They were close. I once joked, 'Is she family?' and a nurse replied, 'She's his niece.'" Clara gripped the chair tightly. Her eyes welled up. Julia looked at her, her own eyes misty. "When I saw news about a lawsuit involving St. Mary's and baby trafficking, I knew someone would eventually come to me. I couldn't do anything at the time, but if my words can help you now, I'm willing to testify." Andrew nodded. "Your statement could open a formal case." "Thank you, ma'am." Clara stood up and took Julia's hand. "You're the light in this darkness. I'm grateful beyond words." After the meeting, Clara and Andrew returned to the law office. Andrew said, "Clara, we're nearly there. Julia, Dr. Parker, and the inconsistencies in the medical records, we almost have enough to file an official complaint. But it's still not enough to get Lucy back." "Correct. We need DNA evidence. But Isabel will never agree to a test." Clara was silent for a moment, then said, "I'll find a way to get close to Lucy. I won't hurt her. I just need a strand of hair. A used spoon. That's all I need to send for testing." "Are you sure?" "I have nothing left to lose, Andrew. I lost her once. I can't lose her again just because I stopped one step short. 3 days later, Clara disguised herself as a flyer distributor. She stood near the entrance of the Beverly Hills community at the time Isabel usually took Lucy out. And sure enough, Isabel appeared, pushing a stroller toward the flower shop nearby. Clara didn't approach. She quietly followed, keeping a safe distance. When Isabel entered the shop, Clara waited outside, watching. Lucy was eating a small pastry, holding a yellow plastic spoon. A breeze swept by. Clara saw the child drop the spoon on the sidewalk. Isabel, busy choosing flowers, didn't notice. Clara quickly walked over, picked up the spoon, and carefully placed it on a nearby windowsill, remembering the location. As soon as Isabel left with the stroller, Clara retrieved the spoon, sealed it in a clean Ziploc bag, and placed it in her backpack. Her heart pounded like a war drum. That night, Andrew took her to a reputable private DNA testing center. Results will take 5 to 7 days, the technician said. You've provided a maternal sample and a child sample. We'll analyze the genetic match. Clara left the clinic and stepped into the night, looking up at the sky. She whispered, "If you really are my Lucy, let me find you again." 7 days later, Andrew called at 6 in the morning. The results are in. Clara held her breath. 99.99% match. That little girl is your biological daughter. Clara collapsed to the floor. She didn't cry out. The tears streamed endlessly down her face in silence. At last, the truth had spoken. Clara held the DNA test result in her hands. The bold line read, "Mother-child relationship, 99.99% match." No more guessing. No more instincts. No more fragile hope. This was the truth. Lucy, the baby taken from her on the day of her birth, was her daughter. In that moment, Clara's emotions erupted. She wanted to scream, to cry, to hold someone tightly. But the first person who came to her mind wasn't her mother, or Andrew. It was Paul. The husband who once held her hand at ultrasounds. The man who whispered to her belly. But also the man who coldly abandoned her after the baby died. And the man who signed the consent form for the surgery, whom Clara had never truly confronted. She picked up her phone and dialed Paul. The call rang 3 times before he answered. "Hello." His voice was low, curt. "I need to see you," Clara said. "It's urgent." "About Lucy." Silence. Then Paul replied. "You're doing this again." "No. Not this time. I'm not guessing. I have proof. DNA. Every number. Every word. I know everything." A long pause. "Where do you want to meet?" he asked finally. "The old park. The one where I used to imagine walking with our daughter." That afternoon, Clara sat on the stone bench, heart burning. Paul arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a long coat, head lowered. "You have 10 minutes, Paul said. Clara didn't waste time. She pulled the DNA test result from her coat pocket and placed it on the bench between them. "Lucy is alive. This is the DNA result. That little girl is our daughter." Paul stared at the paper but didn't touch it. "You've investigated this far, haven't you? You know what? I'm not crazy. I never was. I was the only one who believed our daughter didn't die. And now I know why everything happened." Paul said nothing. Clara continued, her voice tightening. "I know about Isabel. I know she's Dr. Harris's niece. I know about the fake death certificate, the missing birth record, Nurse Julia, Dr. Alexander. I know everything." Paul lowered his head, his hands clenched together. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I didn't think it would go this far." Clara looked at him, her eyes red with emotion. "You knew from the beginning? You knew she didn't die?" Paul looked up. His eyes were torn. I didn't know everything. I just knew part of it. When you went into labor and were rushed to the hospital, Dr. Harris told me it was high risk. He said if complications arose, they had a solution. And after the surgery, he told me the baby had died from asphyxiation but also asked if I wanted to handle it quietly. Handle it quietly? Clara cried out. They declared our daughter dead on paper, and you call that quiet? You don't understand. Paul shouted. I was in shock. I saw you unconscious, there was blood, chaos. And he spoke as if it was the best option. I signed a paper. I didn't read it carefully. I didn't ask questions. Clara froze. The pain struck her heart again. First, losing her child. And now, realizing that the man she once loved had enabled that loss. And after that? When I asked. When I was in agony. When I said something didn't feel right. Why didn't you look into it? Paul bowed his head. Because I was scared. If you were right, it meant I had lost our child. Because of me. How could I live with that? So you ran away. You let me carry everything on my own. Labeled as insane. Abandoned. While you just couldn't face it. Paul didn't respond. Clara stood up, tears falling freely. I don't need you to forgive yourself. I just need you to tell the truth. All of it. Paul looked up, his eyes wet. Dr. Harris mentioned that if we contributed to a hospital fund, they'd provide special care. You said no. I didn't push it. But I knew he wasn't pleased. Then later, a wealthy relative, Isabel, showed up needing to adopt. Everything lined up strangely. I didn't want to believe it, but when I saw Isabel holding Lucy that day, I knew. Clara clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. You saw them? You saw Lucy? Once. By chance. I was visiting Harris for advice. He said the child would have a better future elsewhere. I didn't have the courage to do anything. And then, it all faded away. Clara gasped, nearly fainting. You didn't just abandon me. You abandoned your own daughter. Paul broke down in tears. It was the first time Clara had ever seen him cry. But she was no longer soft enough to forgive. I'm going to court. I'm taking this to the light. Not just Harris. Isabel too. And if you were involved, I won't spare you. Paul nodded, voice trembling. I'll confess. If you need testimony, I'll testify. If you need anything, I'll help. I don't need your testimony. I needed the truth. And now I have it. Clara turned and walked away, not looking back. Her heart ached, but her head was held high. That night, Clara returned to her mother's house. Stella saw her daughter come in pale-faced and rushed to ask. What did Paul say? He knew. From the beginning, Clara answered blankly. And he stayed silent. Stella pulled her into a hug. No words were needed. The next morning, Clara awoke with a clear purpose: she would take this to the law. She and Andrew prepared a complete case file: the DNA results, Julia's testimony, Dr. Alexander's statement, the irregular hospital documents, and all the photos linking Isabel and Dr. Harris. Everything would be submitted to the city's criminal investigation department. That afternoon, Clara decided to go back to Beverly Hills one last time before the case went public. She stood at the gate, peering through the black iron bars. And then, something unexpected happened. A familiar car pulled up, and out stepped Dr. Michael Harris. He wore a white shirt, carried a bag, and rang Isabel's door like it was routine. Isabel opened with a smile. Little Lucy ran out of the house, gleefully calling, Uncle Fair. Clara clenched her fists. Her eyes locked onto Lucy. That child, her flesh and blood, was calling the man who signed her fake death certificate with innocent affection. In that moment, Clara knew, this was no longer just a search for her daughter. It was a battle for life, dignity, and justice for her own flesh and blood. She turned around, her eyes dry. The tears were gone. It was time to fight. "You're sure about this, Andrew?" she asked. "Absolutely. We have everything, Dr. Alexander's statement, Nurse Julia's, the faulty hospital records, the DNA results, and the photo of him entering Isabel's house. This isn't just another name in a file, it's about to become a national headline. Then file it tomorrow morning. The complaint is ready. Just waiting for your signature. Hand me the pen. Ms. Walker, I'm Laura Collins from USA Today. I've reviewed the case file your attorney submitted. Are you willing to speak publicly? If it helps me get my daughter back, then yes. I have nothing left to lose. Are you aware this case could shock the nation? Dr. Harris has a long-standing reputation. I know. And because of that reputation, he's been protected for far too long. Do you consent to publishing a photo of the child with the article? Only on one condition: blur her face. I won't let her be dragged into this war. I promise. Clara, look. Andrew rushed in, waving a newspaper. Front page. Headline reads, "Renowned doctor implicated in infant swapping scandal, a mother's fight for justice after a year of silence." They actually published it. Not only that, it's going viral. Twitter, Facebook, mom groups, everyone's talking. They're calling you the bravest mother in Los Angeles. I'm just a mother who refused to be silent. Latest update: the authorities have summoned Dr. Harris for questioning. And what? Isabel is also listed as a person of interest. That afternoon, Clara confronted Isabel. "What do you want from me?" Isabel snapped, clutching her handbag as she walked out of the investigation office. "You think this cheap trick will make me bow down?" "I don't want you to bow," Clara said, stepping in her path on the courthouse steps. "I want you to admit it." "Admit what?" "You've got papers, DNA, the press. What more do you need me to say? You know exactly what happened. You're holding my child. You call her Lucy. But she's not yours. I've been her mother since day one. No. You're the one who took in a child stolen from her real mother. You didn't carry her, bleed for her, nurse her, or lose sleep in pain. You may feel love, but love built on lies is not real love. I did nothing wrong. I simply accepted a child. They said she was unclaimed. And you know that wasn't true. I don't need to say anything more to you. My lawyer will handle this. And I'll do everything I can to bring my daughter home." "Dr. Harris, do you know why you've been summoned?" the investigator asked, tapping his pen on the desk. "We have a formal complaint, internal documents, witness statements, and a DNA test result. I'm a physician with 30 years of experience. I don't need to prove anything to anyone." "What about the case of Clara Walker? Baby Lucy? Are you aware she was never issued a birth certificate, never saw her child, and that the baby ended up in the hands of your niece? Coincidence? And how do you explain your appearance at Isabel's house 3 days ago? She's family. Is there a problem with that?" "And this," the investigator said, sliding a printed hospital record across the table, "this is a system entry from the hospital, your signature confirming the transfer of a newborn requiring special care. No official file. No legal paperwork. Explain that." "No comment." "Then the court will comment for you." "Andrew, what's happening now?" Clara asked. "The district attorney's office has signed an order to suspend Dr. Harris. They've also searched Isabel's home. All records related to the unlawful adoption have been confiscated." And what? Lucy has been temporarily placed in a child welfare center. Can I see her? Not immediately. But soon. Where is she? Clara asked as she entered the center, her voice trembling. I'm Clara Walker. I was told I could come in to speak regarding a girl named Lucy. We know who you are, the staff member nodded. Yes, Lucy is currently in the activity room. She hasn't been isolated, she's in good health. But what? She seems sad. She hasn't cried, but she hasn't smiled either. We think she senses the sudden change. I just want to see her. Just once. You can stand at the observation window. But you're not allowed to enter until we receive an official court order. Clara stepped toward the viewing glass. And then time stood still. Lucy was sitting at a small table, holding a porcelain doll in her arms. Her face wasn't crying, but her eyes were lost. When she turned toward the glass, their eyes met. Sweetheart, Clara whispered, pressing her palm to the glass. It's Mommy. Lucy stared for a few seconds. Then she pursed her lips. A single tear rolled down her cheek. And then she pressed her tiny hand against the glass. A staff member choked up. She just said, Mama. I've waited more than a year, just to hear that again, Clara sobbed. Please, don't keep us apart any longer. Ms. Clara, the court has officially accepted the lawsuit. They've granted an expedited hearing due to the nature of the case. And Lucy? You'll be granted daily visitation, under temporary supervision. If all documentation holds up, there's a strong chance she'll be returned to you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who believed me. Not everyone dares stand up to someone as powerful as Dr. Harris. But you did. I did it for my daughter. And for the hundreds of other mothers who may have lost their children like I did. And I'm not stopping. Paul. I'm here. I just wanted you to know. Lucy's been placed in a child center. Is there anything I can do? This time, do what's right. Go to court. Tell the truth. I will. I owe it to you and to her. No. You owe it to your conscience. Andrew, if I win this case, you won't just win. You'll force the entire system to change. Harris will be prosecuted. Isabel will never be allowed to adopt again. And you will be Lucy's mother again. Legally. Undeniably. Thank you. If it weren't for you. No. If it weren't for you, no one would have had the courage to fight. You started this. Now it's time for you to finish it. Clara Walker, please enter courtroom 3. Andrew. I'm scared. There's nothing to be scared of. You've come all this way. The truth has spoken. Now it's time for justice to do its part. You're sure? I'm sure. And you won't walk in alone. The court is now in session for the preliminary hearing on the case of Clara Walker versus St. Mary's Hospital, regarding allegations of infant swapping and medical misconduct. Is the defendant, Dr. Michael Harris, present? Present, he replied coldly, his expression unmoved. And Isabel Thompson, related party? Present, she answered, wearing a white blouse, her hand trembling, eyes avoiding Clara. Plaintiff's counsel, you may proceed. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Clara Walker, gave birth to a baby girl at St. Mary's Hospital. She was told the baby had died. However, all relevant documents show irregularities: no birth certificate, no time or date of death, an illegible signature, and no confirmation of the child's existence. Most importantly, after a year-long investigation, my client found a girl bearing all identifying traits of her daughter living in the custody of Ms. Isabel Thompson, who is Dr. Harris's niece. A DNA test has confirmed a 99.99% match between the child and my client. We request that the court recognize the act of infant swapping, order the return of the child for Ms. Thompson, and open an independent investigation into Dr. Michael Harris. Mrs. Walker, do you wish to speak? I didn't come here to be a hero. I'm just a mother who wants to hold her child again after she was taken from me in the cruelest way. For a year, I lived in darkness. I was called insane, abandoned, ignored. But I didn't give up. No mother should ever be denied the right to see her baby. And no one has the right to erase a life on paper just to satisfy someone else's desire. Defense, your response. Dr. Harris's attorney stood. My client denies all accusations. He acted according to internal medical information. Any missing paperwork was the result of administrative errors. There is no evidence proving he orchestrated any swap. And what about your client's appearance at Ms. Thompson's home? The judge asked. They are family. A visit cannot be deemed incriminating. And Ms. Thompson, do you have anything to say? Isabel stood, voice trembling. I didn't know anything. I was simply told the baby came from a reliable source. I didn't know who she belonged to. Clara stood abruptly. You called her Lucy. That's the name I chose when she was still in my womb. Who told you that name? Isabel was silent. After 3 hours of arguments, the panel retired to deliberate. In the waiting room, Clara sat in silence. Andrew beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Do you think I might win? You're not winning. You're reclaiming what was always yours. If they let me see Lucy, the first thing I'll say is, do you remember Mommy? The door opened. A clerk called out. Please return to the courtroom. The court has reached a decision. After reviewing the case files, submitted evidence, and witness testimonies, this court rules that there is sufficient basis to confirm that the child named Lucy is the biological daughter of Mrs. Clara Walker. The lack of documentation and irregularities in the birthing process strongly suggest the presence of infant swapping. The court hereby orders an independent criminal investigation into Dr. Michael Harris for falsification of medical records, abuse of authority, and misconduct. Ms. Isabel Thompson is stripped of all custodial and parental rights over the child, Lucy. The child is to be returned to her biological mother Mrs. Clara Walker through lawful procedures. The hearing is adjourned. Clara stood frozen. Light applause broke out, some in the room wiping away tears. Andrew turned to her and whispered. You did it, Clara. Lucy, she's really coming back to me. This afternoon. At the Child Welfare Center, Clara stood outside the room. A staff member smiled gently. You can go in. We've informed her. Clara pushed the door open. Lucy was sitting on a small chair, holding a teddy bear. She turned and looked at Clara, her eyes wide. Sweetheart, Clara choked out. Do you remember Mommy? Lucy stood up and slowly walked toward her. She said nothing. She simply reached out and gently touched Clara's cheek. Lucy, my baby, Clara pulled her into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry. I came too late. Lucy didn't speak. She only buried her face into Clara's chest. And then, like a miracle, she whispered, Mommy. Clara burst into tears. Ms. Walker, we've arranged all the paperwork. Lucy will be officially returned to you within the next 3 days. Here is the packet for legal custody reinstatement. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you to those who believed in me when no one else would. You are the strongest mother I've ever seen. A few days later, at the park where everything had begun, Clara sat on a stone bench with Lucy in her arms, holding her teddy bear. Stella sat beside them, her eyes misty. My granddaughter, she finally came home. You were right, Mom. A mother's bond can't be broken. No matter what they do, blood always calls to blood. What will you do next? Raise her. Love her. And tell her the story of a mother who walked through hell, just to hold her baby again. Lucy tugged on Clara's hand. Mommy, I want ice cream. Clara laughed. What flavor does Mommy's little princess want? Strawberry? Chocolate? All of them. Then we'll get all of them. Because you deserve every sweet thing in this world. 1 month later, the headlines broke: Dr. Michael Harris officially arrested, facing criminal charges. Isabel Thompson permanently banned from adopting children and charged as an accomplice. Andrew called. They can't run from this. The law will take care of the rest. Clara held a sleeping Lucy in her arms and whispered. I don't need anyone behind bars. I just need to know my daughter is safe. And now, I have everything. Lucy stirred gently in her sleep, and in a barely audible voice, she murmured. Mommy. Clara's story reminds us that motherhood is sacred, and nothing can extinguish the instinct of a mother's heart. When truth is buried beneath layers of power and deceit, only unwavering love, courage, and determination can bring light back. Clara didn't just reclaim her child, she reignited faith in justice and righteousness. The greatest lesson is this. Never stay silent in the face of injustice, especially when your heart tells you something is wrong.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.